Good afternoon and welcome to Social Finance's quarterly Impact First Investing webinar. This webinar is focused on investing in affordable housing. Affordable housing is a challenge in communities across the country. It is a challenge that impacts household wealth, family stability, community stability, and access to economic mobility. On today's webinar, we're going to talk to leaders who are developing solutions that help make affordable housing something that's available to all of us. Good afternoon. I'm Jess Brooks. I'm Vice President for Investor Relations here at Social Finance, and I am delighted to welcome you this afternoon to our quarterly webinar. Every quarter, we host a conversation highlighting how we can invest in solutions to our toughest challenges, how to put money to work with social entrepreneurs who are coming up with business models that address the social and environmental challenges that keep us up at night. This quarter, it's our pleasure to focus our lens on levers for change in affordable housing. Affordable housing is a challenge that affects every single state in this country. 1 in 4 Americans pays more than a third of their income. More than 1 in 4 Americans pays more than a third of their income for housing. Nationally, we have a gap of more than 7.1 million homes for our lowest income residents. Traditional investing hasn't solved this problem, and this is a problem that you can't grant make your way out of either. That's where Impact First Investing comes in. Today, on the webinar, we're going to talk to 3 leaders of organizations that are taking action to address this problem and coming up with solutions that protect, preserve, and create affordable housing in their communities. But first, we're going to talk a little bit about social finance and the context in which we got to know these organizations and their work. Okay, next slide. Social Finance is a national nonprofit organization. We're also a registered investment advisor. We are 100% focused on building partnerships and funding models that deliver meaningful, measurable, positive outcomes for people and communities. Over the last 15 years, we've mobilized close to $500 million through that work. Today, we have about $160 million in assets under management across 7 active funds. We've partnered with some of the leading names in philanthropy and investing to put money to work in initiatives that are creating real social change. Okay, next slide. Our impact investing work falls into 3 buckets. We operate a fund, the Social Finance Impact First Fund. The fund provides a one-stop solution for investing in business models that are addressing social and environmental challenges. We offer impact investing and advisory services, which are customized solutions for foundations, families, and corporate partners. And we build the field through our Social Finance Institute, which does policy advocacy, applied research, and the building and nurturing of communities of practice in the impact investing space. Okay, next slide. A little bit of information about our Impact First Fund. We designed the Impact First Fund to be an easy way to put money to work in a portfolio of impact investments. It's almost like a mutual fund for the private impact market. You can buy in at any point, and you get access to a diversified portfolio that's professionally managed, including some of the best ideas in business models that are creating social change. It's particularly interesting for capital that's been earmarked for charitable purposes, money that's in a donor-advised fund, money you have in a family foundation. If you have capital that you don't need right away, you're not using it and you're not ready to give it away, and you want to create social change in the world, what you can do is put it to work with us, and we'll invest in leaders who have real business models addressing our toughest problems. We vet those solutions, we partner with the managers to help them deliver on the promise of their business models, and then we report to you on the impact that they're creating. The money's invested, so while it's solving those problems, it's also earning a financial return. And then when you're ready to use it, it's there. This is a way to get an impact multiplier on those dollars so that they can be used again and again. Okay, next slide. This shows some of the investments that we've made through our Impact First Fund. In the affordable housing space, the topic of today's webinar is our first investment, which was in a company called Black Star Stability. They're going after a corner of the predatory lending market. And what they're doing is helping individuals who've been targeted by predatory lenders through contracts for deeds. They're helping those homeowners to stay in their homes, rewriting the predatory loans with traditional mortgages that save the homeowners hundreds of dollars a month. On average, the families that Blackstar has worked with have seen a 22-fold increase in their net assets since working with Blackstar. And Blackstar has a vision of supporting 2,000 families with its fund and transferring $100 million in equity to those families over the fund's life. So Blackstar is protecting homeowners, it's providing housing stability, financial stability, and it's helping build wealth. It also has the potential to be transformative in that predatory lending market. The contract for deeds market where they're working is a $250 billion market, and it affects one of the most vulnerable segments of America's homeowners. Okay, next slide. The next slide shows our impact investing advisory work. Here, what we're doing is partnering with clients to create customized solutions. We work with folks from education through design and implementation, right up through portfolio management. An example of that impact investing advisory work, we partnered with a community foundation in Whatcom County, Washington, to design a $30 million investment fund that's focused on addressing affordable housing challenges in their community. We helped them build the investment thesis to understand where the gaps were in their market and to understand what investor demand might look like. The resulting fund won't just leverage the foundation's capital, it's also going to use that capital in a way that helps bring other money to the table from local institutions, from the private sector. Okay, so that's an overview of the work that we do. Now what I'm going to do is turn it over to Kathleen O'Shea, who's a director in our impact investing program here at Social Finance. Kathleen is out there with our team, looking at ways to invest in solutions. She's looking at the social sector to identify the challenges that we need to address. She's working with clients to understand what they want to do with their money. And she's meeting with impact fund managers to understand the solutions that they're bringing to bear on those challenges, and also to kick the tire to understand what those solutions look like from an investment perspective. Kathleen's going to talk to you a little bit about how Social Finance and our partners are thinking about affordable housing, both why it matters and what people are doing to address it. And then she's going to introduce you to our three panelists who are going to describe the solutions that they and their organizations have developed. Okay, Kathleen, take it away.
Thank you, Jess, and good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Kathleen O'Shea, I'm a director of impact investing at Social Finance. I want to start by sharing a bit more about why our team believes impact first investing specifically is an important tool to tackle one of the most critical social issues of our time in the US, which is the affordable housing crisis. If you could flip to the next slide, Albin. Tackling this issue, we acknowledge, is a top priority for many philanthropists and organizations in the social sector. But we acknowledge that doing so will require billions, if not trillions, of dollars of investment, which is far beyond the capacity of grant dollars alone. I won't belabor the statistics on the affordable housing crisis, as I think this is one that a lot of us feel on a personal level and in our communities across the US. But we know that households are overly cost burdened. There is an acute lack of supply driving unaffordability in the rental market, and homeownership is more inaccessible and less affordable than ever. What makes us optimistic, though, is that there is a growing cohort of entrepreneurs and innovators that are looking to change this and unlock more private capital to solutions. Our team has identified over 170 affordable housing-focused impact first investments across the US. And we think about these falling in roughly three categories or seeking to have impact in three main ways. The first is around preservation, so ensuring that units are affordable and maintained and safe. Around protection, which is keeping tenants and homeowners in units and making sure that they're not pushed out or priced out. And finally, around production, so building new units and closing that supply gap of affordable homes. So we're thrilled today to have an illustrative panel of these innovators to bring this opportunity to life, which includes Coralie Pledger from the Austin Community Foundation, Paul Bradley from Integrity Community Solutions, and Rob Bachman from Enterprise. So I am going to turn it over to this group shortly. We'll have each of our panelists speak for about 5 or 6 minutes on their work, and then we'll move into some discussion. We'll have about 10-15 minutes at the end of our session for Q&A from the audience. So please feel free to drop questions in the chat throughout, and we'll do our best to address those at the end. Rob, I will turn it over to you to kick us off.
All right. Thanks, Kathleen. Thanks, Jess. Okay, so I have some slides here. We could put those up. So I am Rob Bachman with Enterprise Community Partners. For those of you not familiar with Enterprise, we're a 43 now year old organization that exists to, in some ways, solve the affordable housing crisis. But as you'll see on the next slide, please. As you'll see on this slide, our mission is fundamentally to, as we say, make home and community places of pride, power, and belonging, and platforms for resilience and upward mobility for all. So, yes, we exist to solve the affordable housing crisis, but we view and approach our work as though housing is not simply a shelter, but really a platform for health, for wealth, for opportunity, for community, for dignity, and that is how we approach our work. So, with that tall challenge, let me describe how we work, which is on the next slide, please. So we do a lot. It's hard to encapsulate in a succinct way, but I like how our CEO, Sean Donovan, who took the helm a couple years ago, he was formerly HUD Secretary and OMB Director under President Obama, but he describes us, I think, in a nice way, which is, while we do a lot, we fundamentally do two things, actually. We provide money and we provide knowledge. So the money, I'll get to this in greater depth in a little while, but we've invested about 80 billion over those 43 years in communities all across the country through debt, equity, and tax credits. Again, I will get to that in greater depth, but that's the money. The knowledge takes a lot of different forms, but at a high level, we are an advocate. So we have policy teams at the federal, state, and local levels. We have an advisory team that actually goes in and advises jurisdictions, over 700 across the country, on their affordable housing strategies. We have programmatic experts that focus on issues related to or adjacent to housing, anything from green and resilience to economic upward mobility to native and rural communities, and the list goes on. I'm not doing it full justice, but you get the idea. We are an advocate, we're a programmatic expert, we like to think, we're an investor. So we're all those three things in one. Now, for the money, the capital platform on the next slide, please. I think this not only describes how we work, but actually we are a little bit of a microcosm of the larger industry. So for those who are totally unfamiliar with, affordable housing finance, this might be at least a helpful, very brief primer on how it works. So at the top right, you see Enterprise Community Loan Fund. That is our CDFI, Community Development Financial Institution. CDFIs, for those of you who are not aware, though I suspect most of you may be, are effectively lending institutions for the most part in overlooked, let's say, underserved communities that have been overlooked by the commercial markets largely. So we are lending, in our case, at least, to developers on the ground so they can develop affordable housing or preserve it for that matter. So that is our CDFI. Any type of investor, institutional, retail, can invest in our CDFI, and obviously we're happy to talk about how. I'm going to give you sort of a breakdown of who invests in what, because that's important too. Just below that, under the tax credit umbrella, you see our housing credit team. This describes our low-income housing tax credit team. The low-income housing tax credit, for those of you not familiar, has been the engine for most affordable housing over the last several decades. So this is, in short, a tax credit where investors get a reduction in their tax liability dollar for dollar in exchange for investing in affordable housing for a long duration. So it really is an effective system. These are largely corporate taxpayers who are investing for the LIHTC, as it's called. Often banks, insurance companies, health systems, and the list goes on, but really corporate taxpayers. And we work with, as you might suspect, all the big banks through this line of business. But that is, represents the 90% or more of all new affordable housing over, I think, since the early 1990s, though, as part of the 1986 tax code. Bottom right there, you see the new market tax credits. I won't go into this in great depth, but another tax credit tool that is meant to help develop not just certainly not housing adjacent real estate. So community facilities, health centers, mixed use, commercial centers, whatever it may be, key lever as well. And then finally, where I sit, on the far left, that blue box equity. So that's the, I guess you could say, private equity team within enterprise that focuses largely on preservation. So preservation of affordable housing, that is acquisition of existing affordable housing that may be at risk of being lost to the market, or its restricted affordability is expiring. Our intent is to invest in those so as to preserve their affordability, which is crucial. And I'll get to how and why in just a moment. In fact, next slide, please. So Jess actually touched on some of these landscape figures, sort of this the magnitude of the challenge. 22, I think you said a fourth, that's right. 22 over 22 million renter households are cost burdened. Over 12 million are severely cost burdened, meaning they're paying over 50% or more of their rent on income. Below that, 4.3 million more units are needed to meet the demand. So there's a severe supply demand mismatch. And bottom right, you see there is a figure that speaks to that preservation need. So by 2030, we are expecting to see over 350,000 units that are restricted. This is putting aside naturally occurring affordable, lose their affordability, if not, absent some intervention by actors like us, essentially. So that's just speaking a bit to the need. Next slide, please. Notwithstanding the deep need for more supply, I mean, there's no denying that. Again, I want to kind of hit on preservation and its virtues, and some of those include some of the cost effectiveness, the efficiency of preservation as an affordable housing strategy. You can see here, for instance, land acquisition and construction costs are obviously, essentially avoided through preservation. Sites are ready. They're already, in fact, fully leased and established communities. Regulatory streamlining, community pushback in the form of NIMBYism or whatever it may be is reduced, if not altogether avoided. This is as I mentioned, leased up properties. There's ongoing cash flow on day one if you're an investor. And of course, these are, by avoiding new construction, you're avoiding a lot of additional burdens on the environment. So it's in many ways just inherently sustainable as a strategy. So again, many of the virtues of preservation that may not be fully appreciated. So I thought I'd point them out. Next slide, please. So I just want to kind of highlight how we approach impact. One of the things, again, I think that's inherent in many ways of affordable housing investment is the alignment between impact goals and economic performance. And what you see here on the far left, you see sort of our own kind of impact pillars, and that is preserving affordable housing, promoting economic upward mobility, implementing resilience strategies, and advancing racial equity. But you see what I've tried to do on the slide is show you how some of those impact practices, as we call them, actually lead to economic performance. And so, for instance, under the affordable housing kind of box, you see that just affordable housing actually, and there's research that backs this up, tends to result in higher occupancy. This kind of stands to reason when you consider that. Especially in down markets, folks really need affordable housing. So these properties tend to be filled out, and the great financial crisis in the years after sort of proved this out in a big way. It was one of the best performing asset classes, sort of counter-cyclical in that way. Affordable housing tends to really rely on public-private partnerships. So we work with states, localities on different tax benefits like tax abatements, tax exemptions in exchange for preserving the affordability. So there's a real alignment there, leads to better performance, more reliable income. It's actually how many of the properties or the investments pencil out in all transparency. Below that, promoting upward mobility, obviously, facilitating services like rent reporting to credit bureaus for renters will tend to lead to greater contentment on the part of residents, which keeps them there. So you're talking about lower turnover costs, higher effective gross income. The list goes on. Obviously, resilience strategies result in lower operating costs and lower utility costs for the resident, I would add, over the long term and so forth. There are many more like this, but this is meant to provide just a window into how we do see a healthy alignment between some of the economic and the impact kind of goals. That's, again, inherent in this strategy, I think. Okay, one more slide. I just want to leave you with sort of a case study. I mentioned the importance, I think, of us focusing on renters in a way that maybe we don't now. So there are 100 million renters. That's about 45 million households that are renting. And I think homeownership and homeowners tends to take a lot of oxygen in the room. We find, but the fact is, and I think there are many statistics, including the fact that I think I might have referenced there are 3 times the number of renter households forming as home ownership households households that own. You heard from Kathleen some of the large statistics as well, but one statistic sort of launched a fund that I want to kind of profile here, and that is that renters, or I should say homeowners, have 40 times the net worth of renters in the United States. So homeowners have, on average, or the median would be something close to 400,000 in net worth compared to the average renter, who has about 11,000. So that is a staggering statistic that launched this fund that I want to quickly profile, which is called our Renter Wealth Creation Fund, meant to drive wealth building outcomes for renters. In short, we are putting renters in the waterfall, so they're part of the economics alongside investors. So we not only include a cashback feature where renters are seeing some of the cash back on the rent they pay, but also providing resident services that may improve their financial literacy, and ultimately, and this is the biggest thing, put them in the waterfall of the actual capital proceeds when the property is refinanced or sold, for instance. So they actually stand to gain potentially tens of thousands of dollars if they're long-term residents. So happy to talk about them more. I know I'm at time, so I really do want to not take up more. So happy to answer any questions, but I'll stop here.
Thank you, Rob. Really, really exciting work, and great example of the importance of preservation and how folks like Enterprise are innovating in this space. I'm going to turn it over to Paul next to talk about his work at Integrity Community Solutions.
Thank you, Kathleen, and thanks for the invitation this afternoon. I'm Paul Bradley. I'm the founder and former CEO of Rock USA, and I'm the founder and current CEO of Integrity Community Solutions, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Rock USA. Continue on with the slides, Alvin, until you hit Rock USA. There we are. And next slide. Great. So this is a sector of home ownership. However, homeowners that own their homes but rent the land underneath it. They fall smack dab between the 2 silos in affordable housing, home ownership and multifamily rental. And oftentimes they're left to their own devices because multifamily rental folks argue that they're not renters, and homeownership folks argue they're not homeowners. And so this little niche of very low income homeowners, as I said, left to their own devices to advocate on their own behalf and an attempt to build secure lives through America's most affordable homeownership asset class. There are 3 million homeowners in 43,000 mobile home parks in the country. And for the last 40 years, a group of nonprofits, starting with the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund, have been helping homeowners purchase their communities as co-ops. In 2008, as I said, I founded Rock USA to scale the work. We had been scaling in New Hampshire. And after 16 years, we have reached roughly 340 co-ops now in 21 states, representing 24,000 homeowners. For folks interested in investing in resident ownership, one option is Rock USA or its affiliates. And there are CDFI, debt and equity opportunities there, as well as grant opportunities for training and technical assistance and other venture elements. What's really exciting, just weeks after I turned over the reins at Rock USA to Emily Thaden, Rock USA's second president, we achieved an amazing goal. $1 billion worth of commercial real estate assets removed from the speculative market and now in the hands of low-income homeowners through cooperative ownership. So very exciting milestone reached. And now on to the next chapter. Next slide, please. So I moved to a subsidiary to accelerate the growth of resident ownership and to address a segment of the market that we could not address through resident ownership just yet. That is in the value add segment of the sector, principally defined as mobile home parks with vacant sites or communities that can be expanded with new sites. The beauty of it is we help meet the demand for new affordable home ownership with a pretty quick to market strategy in terms of delivering new affordable manufactured homes. But let's just take a step back in terms of value add manufactured housing communities. A quick example here, and why we focus on NOI growth at properties. Rob's slides included a hint of this as well, right? You've got NOI, which is gross revenue or revenue minus operating expenses of $500,000 and a value at a 6 cap of 8.3 million. That underlying real estate, that community asset value goes up by $2.5 million if you can grow NOI by $150,000 a year. The way I think about value add is, well, where do we invest those resources in the property, right? And I know in the mobile home park sector, we're dealing with aging assets. So there's a heavy dose of community infrastructure investment to be had. Our goal is to accelerate the growth of resident ownership that doesn't require public subsidy. And our goal, therefore, is to sell communities to co-ops at a discounted sales price, and yet generate enough ROI at ICS to really scale the initiative. Triple bottom line in my sense of the word. Next slide, please. Our first project, we just started really in January of 2025. Our first project's up in the Sierra Nevada foothills, Tuolumne County, a little place called Sonora. Overnight population of 20,000 people, but a daytime population of 55,000 people. And we've got people driving an hour for jobs up in Sonora. It is an 84 site community, 70% occupied. And our value add goal here is to add at least $150,000 of NOI. Next slide. So what we walked into day one was a D property in the A, B, C, and D grading system, and we had an enormous amount of cleanup to do day one. Next slide. Those sites have been cleared and ready for new homes. Next slide. We also ordered those new homes from a factory in Corona, California, in our first month of ownership. 4 Energy Star rated and WUI certified, which is essentially fire resistant homes. And those 3 of the 4 have arrived in the community, and we were on the market last week with our first single wide homes starting at $99,900. As for the factory built folks in the audience, you'll note 2x6 construction and sheetrock walls. These are really nice quality manufactured homes, HUD code for the housing specialist in the bunch. Next slide. We took fire risk mitigation very seriously. You can see what we adopted and what we've done to reduce fire risk here in the foothills. We're at 1,700 feet of elevation. Next slide. And these are the first homes to hit the market. You can see hardy board siding and no vinyl skirting up in this neck of the woods. Very nice looking homes, good quality, all wood cabinets and no plastic sinks. Next slide. So where we're at Integrity Community Solutions, we finance this first deal with a senior subordinate debt package. The first by a CDFI, the second also by a CDFI, but participating in it were 3 donor advised funds and a foundation. Impact investors coming in on a subordinate level, highly subordinate, which really reduced the equity that ICS had to bring to the table, allows us to go other places with what little equity we have. Our goal is to build a warehouse of these types of projects, leveraging senior subordinate debt, and eventually here within 2 to 3 years, launching our first impact equity fund. So we're on the search for additional warehouse stage financing to continue to build out this portfolio. And the beauty of this asset class and this strategy as an impact investment is that the exit, and ICS is committed in every case to provide the residents a right of first refusal to purchase the community as a co-op. And all of Rock USA's services and financing are available to that group of residents for them to purchase it as a co-op. And that has been lasting impact that's provided an enormous amount of wealth building and community stability and security for homeowners over time. Last slide. And as I noted, my successor at Rock USA is Emily Thaden, doing a terrific job. If folks are interested in learning more about Rock USA, feel free to reach out to Emily, or you can reach out to me and I will pass you on. Or if you're interested in ICS, happy to chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Incredible to see the work in that one project come to life. I know a lot of our partners and investors, and I imagine many on this call are trying to figure out how to tackle housing crisis in rural communities. And so really thrilled to hear more about your work and excited to see it evolve, especially as you look to the fund launch. Coralie, I'm going to pass it over to you to share a little bit more about Austin Community Foundation and your Housing Accelerator Loan Fund.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for the invite to be here today. Austin Community Foundation, we've been around since about 1977, over 600 million in assets, very much a place-based community foundation organization. So focused on our 5-county region and what the greatest needs are. And if you'll go to the next slide, of course, housing is one of them. And I won't spend much time here because everyone feels it across the country, and you've heard some good stats already. But our city did a study back in 2018 to look at how many affordable homes were needed. We are not there yet, and I would say that 135 that they came up with in 2018 is understated given the size of the city's growth. So we are massively focused on production of those 3 Ps. This housing fund that we created is very much focused on production in the urban core. So next slide. What we, as we launched this fund, we started doing impact investing in 2015. And really added housing in 2018 with a new strategic plan. And we really dabbled as we were learning. We tested, we made smaller loans, and quickly found out that we needed to scale. Housing is just too big a problem. So we launched a housing fund in 23. And as part of that, we really did a landscape scan and really a learning journey to figure out what the pain points were and what the market needed. I think that's critical. We didn't want to build something that we wouldn't have a line out the door of people desiring to tap. So what we heard were really the pillars of the development of the fund, which is fast money, flexible money that can do different things, and concessionary, low cost money. So those are really the pillars of our fund. So to the next slide, I'll give you a sense of what it looks like in the products and sort of finish with a quick case study. So it's a revolving loan fund. We aggregate capital. Our investors, besides our own endowment funds, we have our city and our county are investors in the fund, which I think I cannot say how critical that public-private partnership is. They are the backbone of this fund and help drive priorities and help us focus on the best projects. We also have a local health foundation and some private foundations that are invested, as well as some donor advised funds of our own that are in the fund. So it's a great aggregator of capital for folks that may not feel comfortable making their own investments, but really want to be in the housing space. So we call it our sort of turnkey solution. And then we work with the city and others to find pipeline. We outsource our underwriting and originations, but we handle all our local relationships and pre-screens and back office here at the Community Foundation. We make those loans, they're short term, so they revolve quickly, and then we put that money out again. So it's definitely intended to put the same money to use repeatedly over short periods of time. So next slide. And here I threw this up just to give you a sense of what our criteria are. I think here what we learned early on was when you just announce that you're going to be in impact investing, it means really different things to different people. And we actually frustrated people because we said we're doing it and then we said no to a lot of people. So it was really important externally that we communicated what we were doing. And also internally, it helps us with decision making. But again, staying flexible so that we can always adjust. So we're very much focused on the lower end of the income spectrum because those are the projects that need the most subsidy, and that's really our concessionary terms. And then on the impact side, we really looked at vulnerable populations, great locations. And then we really, our affordable housing ecosystem is there's some really large, significant, heavy players, and then it drops off. So we really wanted to help build that ecosystem as well. So next slide. Just a quick look at our products. Again, we call it early stage, but it's really pre-development through the completion of construction. We do multifamily and residential, but we want to be out in 2 years, 2 to 3 years. So we're not doing permanent financing, and we're not doing mortgage lending, of course, to the home ownership. But again, secured short-term concessionary rates. All right, next. And just to brag a little bit, it's about a $17.5 million fund. We're still in fundraising mode. We'd like to be at least 25 million. We have the need for it, so we want to be there. But we've made 8 loans so far. We're probably going to make 4 to 5 more this year. I think the focus here is number of units. And again, across all income spectrums up to 80% and different types in different parts of town, but all affordable. And then we want to leverage. Our loans range from 2 to 4 million, but the projects are 20 to 40 million, right? So we're only a small piece of it. And again, trying to really focus on populations that are difficult to serve and need concession. Okay. All right. And then just to end, Katie Lofts, luckily, this was a very friendly developer. They let us practice on them, which we so appreciate. This was one of the first land loans we made. And again, here the FAST came into play because it was a tax credit project and the time it was extended and the time it was taking too long. And they had a purchase contract for the land and we're going to lose it. And it was this incredible location. So we jumped in and made a quick loan for them to buy the land. Then when construction started, they paid that loan off and we made a subordinate construction loan at 2.5%. So it saved cost to the project. And we have the picture of the ribbon cutting. The tenants were there speaking. It's permanent supportive housing. So these were folks exiting homelessness and it was lovely to see. And that loan just paid off. So great success. And that's it. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Coralie, and thank you to you all. I think hopefully gives the group a sense of all of the different ways that impact investors in the field are tackling the affordable housing crisis in different contexts and from different angles across the 3Ps and more. I'm going to maybe pose a couple of follow-up questions to our panelists, and then we'll have some time at the end for audience Q&A, so start thinking about what you may want to ask the group. But maybe to start, would love to hear from one or two of you on the question of why, if I was a prospective impact investor, why I should focus on affordable housing as an issue area of focus, and why impact investing capital specifically is needed alongside grant capital, alongside public dollars, public subsidies. So you could share a little bit more about kind of the unique role that flexible, low-cost capital plays in projects.
Well, I'm happy to jump in here. I think, again, if you look at the sort of capital stacks of these projects, we're not trying to replace CDFIs or bank lending. They're still in the mix. They have an expertise in construction lending that we really depend on. I think and it certainly doesn't replace the city, county, municipality, and federal funding, but there is a gap, and it needs to be concessionary. And then I think from a standpoint of why folks should jump in here, I think it's our communities and our country's greatest need. And I think it's just hard. It's hard to know. We produced a report as we started our journey in how philanthropists could participate because it's difficult. And there's lots of ways to do it. You can do grants and you can do impact investing, but we just offer our fund as, again, sort of a turnkey way that people can participate without having to have all the expertise.
Maybe building on that last point, Corley, would love to hear from the group around the value that you all see in intermediary organizations like CDFIs, funds, in being an aggregator of capital and a kind of easy way for an investor to deploy capital into community or into specific projects.
I'm happy to take a first crack at that if it helps. Yeah, I mean, enterprise is an intermediary at the end of the day. What we do is aggregate capital from our investor network across the country, and this is again comprised of banks, insurance companies, family offices, individual investors. The list goes on. But connect them with projects on the ground or developers who are doing good work in communities. And we are building that bridge basically, because otherwise there would be no good mechanism without quality intermediaries. It's hard to find high impact, much needed projects, in your backyard, to say nothing of elsewhere around the country. So intermediaries I think they're critical in building that bridge. No matter how localized an approach you have, such as Corley's, and in many cases ours, or national. So that would be my, simple answer. I think there's no way around it.
Yeah, and Kathleen, I would add that there's intermediary risk and there's project risk. I think in the community development field, affordable housing field, across the country, enterprise prime example, but CDFIs, the level of risk one is taking in investing or lending to an intermediary is minuscule. If it is, we had at the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund, New Hampshire Charitable Foundation was a balance sheet lender. They had never done such a thing before. And it was wonderful when the CFO came to us one day and said, the best performing fixed income investment in our portfolio this year was the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund. And I've heard that time and again. And so that's not a heavy lift. That's not, intermediary lending, I think, ought to be, multiple of what it is today. Project level risk is a different matter. And those of us out sponsoring projects, we need impact investors that'll come into projects, but it is a different risk. And of course, our objective is to make it as low risk as possible.
And if I could add my pitch for CDFIs, in community foundation world, when you start impact investing, the first thing everyone tells you is go find every CDFI in your region and lend to them, which is what we did and we continue to do.
That's great.
We couldn't get by without you all. Thank you.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, that resonates a lot, Corley, and I think is often our starting advice for clients as well. And I think you raise a great point, Paul, around the ability for these organizations to de-risk and provide a pool, a diversified portfolio, and to investors that may not have the expertise or capacity to look at pro formas or evaluate different layers of risk of individual projects. Would love to talk maybe about a topic that's a bit of the elephant in the room in kind of all things in the impact space right now, which is the regulatory environment. And would love to hear about how your organizations or how the field overall is navigating the regulatory environment, the impact it's having on your work, and how the sector can and should respond.
I'll step in first because one of the things that really excites me about Integrity Community Solutions and this strategy is, we're attempting to use market forces, pretty standard private equity business model, if you will, to acquire value add properties and add value. We are not leveraging public resources, and I think there's got to be more attention to what can we accomplish outside of public resources. It may not get as bad as we all fear, but it may get as bad. And so we've got to figure out ways to deliver without some of the tried and true subsidy sources. And the subsidy pie is fixed at its best anyway. So we've got to push the boundaries and figure out ways to preserve naturally occurring affordable housing and produce without heavy doses of public subsidy.
I appreciate that. And as an organization that does try to activate market forces by leveraging the public resources as well, I will say, I mean, certainly there are risks. Like I can point to a number of things that in the president's budget that are concerning. But of course, the president's budget is a statement and not an actual final budget by any means. But I think some of the two bright spots I would say with affordable housing are, number one, it actually is the rare bipartisan issue. It's got huge co-sponsorship. Take an example, the low-income housing tax credit is a wildly popular across the aisle, tool. And it has more co-sponsors actually in this session than it ever has before for the current bill and making its way through Congress. So that's one thing. So that is a real thing, not to put aside or ignore what's happening with some of the proposed cuts. The other thing I would say, and I touched on this a bit, but a lot of the resources that we leverage are actually at the state and local levels, which are not immune to some of the current commotion, but they're not. It's not in the same crosshairs. So, we are in our projects, for instance, I'm talking about my team as well as others, really leveraging state resources so that tax exemptions I meant to help projects pencil out are critical. That's not, feeling the same regulatory heat that maybe some of the federal ones are, and those are critical tools. So those are, I guess, a couple of bright spots that may be paradoxical in some ways.
And I would just add at the local level, since we're place-based, we have the advantage of partnering with our city, and they have a significant housing bond that was approved by taxpayers. So we have all these projects in their pipeline to follow. I think this may be the last housing bond if city resources are becoming more scarce. So we're going to have to adjust, and I think we're going to have to create some new products, for example, that might fill the holes that the city had filled in the past, perhaps some more permanent financing. So we're keeping an eye on that.
Thank you all. We have had a handful of questions come into the chat, so I'm going to turn to those. We had one question on the topic of tax credits come in on qualified opportunity zones and how the group may think about when and where those are appropriate and kind of the opportunity for investors and communities there.
I guess that would be me. It's a loaded one. I think the evidence of the efficacy of opportunity zones is still coming, to the surface. I mean, there have been numerous studies that kind of show different things. There are legitimate questions being asked about how widespread the positive impact is. It seems to be concentrated in a few, maybe already soon to thrive or thriving markets. So, how there's still questions on the impact specifically. We have the experience of having launched and managing now Opportunity Zone Fund, and we actually have found it's possible. And this is our one exception to the preservation. We did this is new construction. We have found it's possible to execute, but the incentive seemed a little too shallow for deep affordable housing to really work out. So it didn't seem, if I'm being honest, totally conducive to a fully fledged affordable housing deep impact strategy. That's been our experience. I will say also that we wrote a letter to Senator Tim Scott's office that advocated for, I think deeper kind of credit, I guess, for deeper affordable housing and other mechanisms like that. We'll see if that comes through. We're keeping an eye on it, but we're not holding our breath necessarily. So, we will see. I'm happy to discuss that more offline.
Thank you, Rob. We had another question come in the chat from Roberto around kind of what's happening in the home insurance market with providers making the decision to move out of markets due to environmental risk. So curious if any of your teams have navigated this. Paul, wondering if this has come up in any of the communities out west with wildfire risk that you're working in, or Rob or Corley, and how you've addressed it.
Thank you. California FAIR Plan for both homeowners coverage as well as business interruption coverage up in the foothills. So we're leveraging the public source.
Yeah, it's not been an issue for us, mostly because we're on early stage and not on the permanent phase, but obviously an issue.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's going to be, I imagine only increasingly a topic of these types of conversations in the future. And, it's wonderful that in certain jurisdictions there are other public options out there, but, we're going to have to continue to follow and navigate that. I have a question in the chat for you, Corley, around the investors in your fund. If you could share a little bit more about who is coming in and whether these were permanent gifts or whether they are expecting any type of return.
Sure. So right now, again, 17.6 million, about a third of it is our philanthropic grants. And so those are permanent, long permanent gifts. Large ones from a local health organization, but also some donors and fund holders who made gifts. About a third of the capital is the county and the city who made 0% long-term loans, so no cost, but does have to be repaid. And then the other third are technically PRIs, so our own money, some of our endowment funds, some donor advised fund holders, some private foundations. So that's partly why our cost of capital is so low, because only a third of the capital is interest bearing, and even that is only at 2%. So our cost of capital is about 60 basis points, which is why we can keep the loans to the projects so low. So they're about 2.5% to 3%. It still gives us a spread to cover expenses. But again, our real focus is that low cost to the projects. We're considering taking on more debt in order to leverage up and grow because of demand, but we're just balancing the cost issue. We don't want to have to pass that cost through.
Thank you.
Great. Well, I will maybe ask a closing question of the group, and we'll try and end on a high note here. And social Finance, I think one of the things that gets us most excited about impact investing and why we wake up every morning is really the opportunity to use this capital to help prove out new business models that can scale and address solutions in a sustainable way. And so would love to hear from the group on kind of one innovation either within your organizations or that you've seen elsewhere in the field that has you excited about its opportunity to scale and really kind of leave a mark in the housing space.
Happy to kick us off if it would help. I mentioned on the last slide the Renter Wealth Creation Fund is my kind of profile that I quickly zoomed through. But one thing I didn't get to mention was, what the capital structure, how it all worked basically. And this was actually what would now be considered a concessionary fund. And I say now because it was launched at the peak of the low interest rate environment. So the rate of return was a little more attractive than it is now. Nevertheless, we structured it since it was a first of its kind fund, trying to prove some things, proving that renters should be considered value creators actually, that the renters, because they are paying rent, not only that, they are contributing to the well-being of the property, they're being community stewards, all those things. Why should they not be included in the economics actually in some ways? So we're posing that question through this and really challenging the current paradigm. But the way we did, I think since it was a first of its kind, we feel like we had to blend in kind of first loss capital. So there were two tranches of investors. One kind of up here that would be more, let's just say commercial, though again, it's concessionary funds, so that's not quite right. But beneath them were, first loss subordinate investors who were largely investing for, their PRI bucket or in many cases DAFs. But and it proved out they catalyzed a whole new level of investment from that sort of top tranche. So it really was, we had a successful fundraise because of that structure, and I think the resonance of the model. But we hope, that was critical. I think in catalyzing that wave of investments and hopefully proving something that can help build the field long term. So I'll stop there.
I'm not sure this is innovation, but we do need to scale. And so I think what that will take is, we got to 17.6 million really easily, but now it's harder. So we've got to look more at banks, we've got to look more at debt and find a way to have the numbers still work. And then I think on the product side, we've got to innovate. Perhaps we had discussion around permanent lending. Again, where are the gaps and how are we going to fill those if the city steps away and some of that federal financing is not there? So I think those are the things we're going to see in the future.
Great. I'd say something I'm really excited about is really the focus on the ownership economy and community ownership specifically. So there's some really fun and exciting work. It's been long-standing in some cases, but some really exciting work. Obviously at Rock USA and Integrity Community Solutions and our objective of accelerating the growth of resident ownership, but our friends at Grounded Solutions Network and the Homes for the Future Fund, our friends at Trust Neighborhoods and the MINT approach, which is really a community ownership and mixed income housing strategy. So lots of interesting models I can appreciate from an impact investor's point of view. It's confounding, but nonetheless, there are some really exciting things going on. And it's really exciting to be at this point working with colleagues who are, focused on scaling up the impact, scaling up the activity, because some of us have been at this a long, long time. And it's clear we haven't made as deep a impact or as much penetration as we need. And so it's absolutely past time to step up.
Thanks, Paul. And thanks to all of our panelists. And thank you to all of you for joining us today. We hope the panel has given you some idea of why investing in affordable housing matters and some of the innovative ways that people around the country are doing it. And we hope that this has whet your appetite to learn more about impact first investing and to think about how you can be activating some of your portfolio to invest in this work. If you are interested in continuing the conversation, our team would love to hear from you. Kathleen and I have our contact information up on the screen right now. Thank you again for spending your Wednesday with us, and we hope you all enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.